There was a rumor that Micheal Porter Jr. might be traded if he's not extended before the start of the season. Someone had to leak it. Who gets leverage out of putting that out into the media? What is the percentage chance Micheal Porter Jr. is traded?
Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win!
The only Net fans you know? The only Nets fans you know? Man. I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to the Only Net Fans You Know podcast. I'm Peter. Welcome to episode 132. I have a very special guest today, the site manager of NetsDaily and the host of the Brooklyn Pod. Welcome to the show, Anthony Puccio. What's going on, Pooch?
So, Pete, it's a pleasure to finally be on the podcast. We got a lot to catch up on, even in the dog days, huh?
Yeah, man, this is a long time coming. I'm excited for this. Let's jump straight into it. The first thing I want to talk about was the comments that Tsai made about the Knicks championship. I'll paraphrase this very quickly. Every year, some team is going to win a championship. So what happens that this year, that team is in the same city. It doesn't make us feel very good. It irritates our fan base, and it's embarrassing. But you shouldn't let the embarrassment factor affect how you perform. What was your first reaction when you heard that?
My first reaction was, this is incredibly unique. You have a multi-billionaire owner of a team who really doesn't speak out a lot and speak publicly. I was a little bit shocked. I was a little, I like I mentioned, it was certainly unique. It was transparent. Of course, I understand why fans could say, I don't appreciate that type of publicity, or I don't appreciate that being brought upon us, that word, or whatever, this media attention that it's garnered. But I think when you look at it from the lens of, what else is he supposed to say, right? Is he supposed to say, I'm happy about the Knicks winning, right? Like, he's supposed to be embarrassed. He's supposed to be angry. And if he wasn't, as a businessman, as a Nets fan, whatever it is, then what are you supposed to be, right? Like, as a competitor, you're always supposed to want to win. And I understand the context of what he's saying in regards to, like, one team is always going to win. This is the mindset of modern NBA owners and governors around the league, that it's a business first before it is a passion project. There's 1 out of 30 that are going to win every single year, and not every year is going to be us. It shows his business acumen. It shows that he's not going to be impulsive simply because of his own emotional output or the fan base's emotional output. I don't think he was speaking on behalf of the fan base. Maybe I'm wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. I think that if he said anything other than being embarrassed, irate, angry, if he said, I'm fine with it, I'm happy with it, Nets fans would be rioting. That's just my read on it. And I do commend him for being transparent, at least, and speaking to such a unique, and in such a unique way, right to the center where Nets fans are very much located, and that's netsdaily.com.
You're not wrong, right? Like, how often do we see something like that actually happen, of an owner admitting something like that? And you're right, the fan base would probably riot if it was the other way around and we said, oh, we're happy for the Knicks to win. I'm not irate or embarrassed. And yeah, it sucked. It was hell. They were kicking ass every day. I live in a neighborhood surrounded by Knicks fans. Most of my friends are Knicks fans. It was not fun. The group chat name changed to Knicks in 5. Like, it was hell. It was hell. I'm not happy about it. You know what I mean? I'm really not happy about it. But I don't think I would say irate. If he is speaking for the fan base, I feel a little But if that's his own personal,
it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I mean, you had the big three. If you're Tsai, you bought the team. You bought the team when the big three was coming here. I mean, you bought the Nets. You bought Barclays Center, all of BSE at a record-setting price at that time. And you had Kevin Durant, you had Kyrie Irving, and then you later had James Harden on that team. And it was, you were the title favorites. And as far as his first experience was as an owner of the Nets and this organization, they were the number one talk on ESPN. They were championship contenders year in and year out for at least 2-3 years there. It is embarrassing. If you're the owner of the Nets, if you're the general manager, if you're the coach, if you're anyone affiliated, a fan, you should in a certain way, I'm not saying feel inferior to Knicks fans, but it should be embarrassing. Like you were just there. You just had multiple opportunities. You were just 2 centimeters away. And now a couple of years later, you just lost 60 games. And you did it, a year in for two consecutive years. How angry can you be at Joe Tsai for saying that? He's embarrassed. He's being so honest and so transparent for a fan base that's wanted that. I think this is a step in the right direction.
The one part that I was happy about was the whole quote unquote sticking to the plan, because my mindset is this: I'm not happy the Knicks won, but what's happening across the river doesn't affect me over here.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm focused on what we're doing. And we heard all this news before the offseason that the Nets wanted to make a jump and the lottery was going to be a big focal point on this. How much did the lottery not falling in our favor change the plan? How much wiggle room did we actually have here?
I mean, look, if you land the number 1 pick.
Oh, yeah, that's totally different, right?
Right. If you land the number 1, number 2, and you're playing in a New York market, you're able to probably fast track this process as a whole. But you fall a 6, and it's no diss to Micheal Porter Jr. and things of that nature. But as a whole, as a general, that Sean Marks would ever change his plan just based on this factor, right? Unless it was something like I just mentioned, dramatic enough that will be enough to lure in a specific type of star too. Let's emphasize this point that he is very, very, very dead set on a certain type of star. Sean Marks is very conscious of his cap space and his flexibility. So I don't think it would have changed much at all unless it was something very dramatic like the number 1 pick. So now, he set out on this plan after trading Mikal Bridges. I think the Nets have had this plan, and they're not reacting. They're not reacting to the Knicks winning the championship, and that's for our last point. But to this, he's not reacting to the draft lottery and them, them falling lower than they wanted to. Instead, they're going to make the most of it. They got the player that they liked. I think they had him probably ranked higher than 6. I can't imagine that Marks or anybody within the Nets organization, Joe Tsai, would fast track the process when they've, again, set out for this. This has been the plan. This is what it is. Tsai has said it about impulsive decisions. Sean Marks has said it about impulsive decisions. Bad things happen. And seriously, what rush is there? I know the fans wanted to see maybe a Peyton Watson type of signing or something like that, but what's going to move the needle this year when the Eastern Conference is just getting so much stronger? And I'm not making excuses for them. This summer was supposed to be a summer where they did use that flexibility, but I think they ran into a wall, and I think they realized there aren't any of the superstars that fit the criteria of what we are looking to build here in Brooklyn around Yegor, around Micheal. You get a Julius Randle type 3-time All-Star. You have Micheal Porter Jr. on the books for another year. You just extended Jordi Fernandez and the entire coaching staff. You know what you're building with, and you still have that flexibility next summer or even throughout the year to make a trade. They're very much in the driver's position still throughout the trade deadline and next offseason, when there are probably better options for them, and they also get to kind of see what they have with this young core.
I don't think fans realize this, but teams don't look at their roster and go by a year-by-year basis. They have a 3-year plan. They're looking possibly even 4 years ahead, especially when you're rebuilding, right? It's not a win-now situation, so it's more of a long-term view. I know it sucks what has happened, but I think we have to have a little bit more patience as a fan base, because let's face it, the 2 guys who are supposed to be leading our franchise can't buy a beer yet. It's going to take them maybe 3, 4, 5 years till we see them in their prime, right? And right. I do say all that to say, was this offseason a disappointment to you, or at the very least, were underwhelming?
Peter, I was a little underwhelmed that they didn't make one big swing. But again, I think that's more of a market problem versus the Nets problem. I don't think it was a failure by any means. If I had to give them a grade, I would say a B. You got to see Micheal Brown Jr. in Summer League, at the very least, show a small sample size and flashes of being something that the Nets can build with and build around. We got a sneak peek at the progress and development with Yegor Dioman and how they're going to build around these two guys. I think a lot of fans are underestimating Julius Randle being brought in, a 3-time All-Star who, a lot of people here, I think in New York, in Brooklyn, they saw him and they see him as the guy that was on the Knicks. But what they're forgetting is that Julius Randle was the star on the Knicks when they revamped that entire culture, which led to a championship. So I'm not sitting here saying that Julius Randle is going to be some magician and come here and change the entire culture, but let's not diminish what he's done as a player on the court and also as a professional in the locker room. I'm not going to say that, they're going to be a playoff team or even compete for a play-in. Obviously, that's an ideal scenario, but right now what Nets fans have is everything they were asking for 2 years ago. They are taking the necessary steps. They got the good coach. They got the good young players. Now I think their goal is to see how the Flatbush Five, all five first-round picks from 2025 can develop this upcoming year. How can these guys lay the foundation and be the surrounding players for a team that's going to run 1 through 12 when you're trying to finally learn that star next summer or the summer after, or you're trying to make a trade because you're competing, you're on the line. Can Danny Wolf become a role player? Can Nolan Traore become a role player? Can Ben Saraf become a role player? Or are these guys going to be juggling up and down in the G League? That goes for Drake Powell too. Year 3 of this rebuild, they absolutely have to capitalize on these things.
I think Randle is the perfect fit for Jordy's offense. Jordy uses the point series offense, using the big in the hub, a lot of movement going around, a lot of screens being set. I think he's going to be such a system fit that we did not see with Claxton, considering that's not really his game.
Right.
And I thought he made very good strides, but I think seeing Randle here, I think will really open up the Nets offense. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think when you look at the makeup of this Nets team, you're seeing what the Nets seemingly have built their roster out into is all players who are triple threat options. They could shoot, they could pass, and they could put the ball on the floor at any single time. Obviously, if they could play on the other end, play some defense, it's an added bonus. So when you bring up Julius Randle, I think you're talking about that kind of tough, physical power forward who could play small forward but also play center, who can stretch out and hit a 3-ball or pump fake, put the ball on the deck and dunk it in someone's face. I mean, this is somebody who, in my opinion, Sean Marks and Jordy Fernandez absolutely love because of those things I just mentioned. Being a triple threat option, that he can indeed, yes, he can pass the ball at a high rate, that he can pump fake, dribble, get in the lane, and kick it to the outside perimeter, which the Nets are going to want to utilize. Julius in the pick and pop and work from there. I think you're going to see a whole lot of him operating out of that high pick and roll with Yegor and with Micheal Brown Jr. And defenses are really going to have to adjust to how they want to cover him and how they want to cover the guard.
All right, I'm going to get to the kind of the quote-unquote meat of the episode, the whole Micheal Porter Jr. extension. It looks like they're not going to reach a deal. Jake Fisher has said,
I'm not expecting a extension for Tyler Hero either, or really Micheal Porter Jr. I think of the guys listed below, I'm really only expecting a contract extension for Steph.
Chris Haynes of TNT mentioned a lot earlier in the offseason that they would meet towards the end of Summer League. We don't know if they've met. There was a rumor from Brian Lewis that Micheal Porter Jr. might be traded if he's not extended before the start of the season. I hear that, and I kind of hear that's more of a leverage move. Are you going to move a guy just to move a guy? I understand if you wait and then you try to extend him at the trade deadline. If I'm Micheal Porter Jr., I'm going to say, listen, in 2 months, I'm going to be a free agent. Why would I sign an extension now? I could just wait and see if my market develops, and then we could talk about a deal. With the whole MPJ situation, like what exactly is going on right now?
I mean, I look back at Cam Johnson. We kept hearing in the offseason how they were going to trade him. They were going to trade him. A lot of fans just wanted to move him because the Nets were tanking and he was helping them win basketball games. I think in this scenario with Micheal Porter Jr., if you're Sean Marks in the front office, really, what's the rush? I mean, what's the rush? I understand that at some point during the season he could say, I'm a free agent, I could walk for nothing. But if Sean Marks isn't getting anything close to what he wants, there's no need to what just to move him, right? I can't understand why the Nets, and like they've never been an impulsive organization under Sean Marks. They've been very careful with how they trade. Some people believe they're a little bit too reserved when they trade, but I believe right now this is strategic. Sean Marks is just not going to fast track an extension for MPJ when I think the Nets are still in evaluation mode. You know,
let me interrupt you here. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm gonna go on a limb here and say I don't think Micheal Porter Jr.'s agent would put that out. So if that's coming into the media realm, someone had to leak it. And if I'm gonna make a hypothesis here, I would say it would have to be the Nets that would leak that. Why would you leak that in that knowing like the context of how Sean Marks works, knowing that, yeah, you know what, if we don't sign this guy to an extension, we're probably not going to trade him. Why leak that out into the media?
What leverage does he gain by leaking that?
That's the question. That's what I wanted to ask you.
What leverage does Sean Marks or the Nets gain from leaking that? You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like there are names that are listed or teams that are saying they're interested. So it's not like they're
not close to a deal, right? They're not close to a deal. So this is not like something to get it over the goal line.
No, and I think that when you naturally you hear leaks, you kind of get a sense of maybe what the value is, or teams might gauge value. The Nets are not gauging any value for Micheal Porter Jr. They're not doing anything besides nothing. They're literally doing nothing. It's everybody else seemingly doing the talking. And what's the play if you're saying that it wouldn't be Mark Bartelstein that's putting this out there? What's the play for the Nets, right, Pete? Like what do they get out of putting that out there?
Who gets leverage out of putting that out into the media? That's the question. I don't see either side really, unless you're the Nets and you kind of want to force him into a deal. But then it's like, well, look at his age. He's going to be 28. He probably has one more really good contract left in him. You're not going to rush into that. I don't know. Maybe it's not the Nets, right? I could be 100% wrong here. I just think it's just a very strange move in my interpretation.
Look, there are sources everywhere. It could come from the team. It could come from the player. It could come from someone across the country, right? You never know where these things are coming from, where these leaks are said. Brian Lewis is as credible as they come. You know that he's top notch. So we're certainly not taking away from his reporting. But
exactly.
I think, when it comes to MPJ and like actually looking at this extension, I think Nets fans also have to ask themselves, how many players on a team, on a championship contending team, are making more than 40 mil? And the answer is usually, now there's 25 out of 30 teams with at least one player making above 40 mil. But there's very few that actually have two. And if they have two, they're going for it in most cases. So I think what Nets fans have to ask themselves is, do you want to use one of those potential two, maybe three spots in the next 3 years while trying to stay out of the second apron, while also not competing for a championship? Like Sean Marks is, of course, Micheal Porter Jr. is a very good basketball player. Of course he's skilled. Of course you could see the impact that he's had on Yegor Dioman. But he's also got back injuries. He's got a history of that. He's worth a lot of money. Other teams might be willing to do that because they're competing right now. They're competing this year. For the Nets, why are they going to waste one of those spots that they can use on multiple max players for someone who, we saw him last year, played great, fringe all-star, but they really weren't anything better than a lotto team? I could kind of put that back to you, Pete. Like, if you, as a Nets fan, like, would you want the Nets, when they're in contention mode, to suddenly have this stopgap where MPJ is one of two or one of three on the books for the next 3 years, making $43 million a year, on top of knowing that you have to extend Yegor and you have to extend MBJ, assuming that he's as good as he is? And what about the rest of the Flatbush Five? These contracts are going to be coming up in 3 years, 2-3 years. So you extend Michael Porter Jr. now for what? He's already on the books for one more year. Then you're going to dip into the second apron for him when you have 7 first-round picks in the last 2 years.
Michael Porter Jr. is a tremendous system fit for the Brooklyn Nets, right? Like you said, we've seen the impact it has on the roster. Perfect with the system. Like, you could not mold a better player, I think, for his role. I say all that to say, I think they should move off him as soon as possible, especially if you can get multiple first rounders. Well, we know that if teams are contending, usually they don't have a lot of draft picks, or they have limited room in their cap space. They don't have a lot of apron room. So their moves that they make have to be very calculated, right?
Right.
If you're going to add a Michael Porter Jr., how much is it worth to trade for him? I think if the Nets get offered like a first and a second, I think they should take it, because one season of Michael Porter Jr. is, I don't think his value is as high as Net fans think that it is.
It could depend also when, right? Like if it's the trade deadline and there are some desperate teams, like one of the first things I thought of just as a hypothetical is, if the Nets could somehow get their own first-round pick from the Rockets back. The Rockets are a team that are going for it, right? They're all in right now. Maybe they need a wing. Maybe something happens. They have the Nets pick. Michael Porter Jr. is somebody who felt, like you said, he fills a lot of voids that a lot of these contending teams have. A scoring wing who could do a little bit of it all is invaluable.
And he doesn't need the ball, right? He could play
Right.
off the ball entirely on offense.
Right. As a one-year rental for a team like the Rockets, if they are indeed going for it all and they're knocking on the door come trade deadline, maybe they do pull it and they do offer the Nets their first-round pick. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Marks is maybe banking on something like that, right? Where, if you ask me what is his value right now, I think, it's got to be some sort of high-stake first-round pick like that, or you get a young player in return that you feel is going to mesh into your culture, into this team, with Micheal Brown Jr., with Yegor Dioman, and someone that's going to be seamless. I thought like a Peyton Watson type of player actually is like a very good example. I know he just signed with Cleveland, of course, but someone like that I think would be ideal. But if you could get a couple of firsts, that would also be ideal too. But as an expiring contract, I'm not 100% sure.
What is the percentage chance Michael Porter Jr. is traded by the trade deadline this year? I'm putting you on the spot.
Sean Marks really doesn't trade players at the deadline unless they demand out. Like the Kyrie situation, KD situation, that was right at the deadline. Harden was like a little bit before, but it was still around that time. But you see a relatively common pattern with Sean Marks and how he operates at the deadline is that he really, really doesn't swing for the fences, because I think the middle of the season, the Nets are often in evaluation mode. So I think that he's going to be here through the trade deadline. I think that we're more poised for something like maybe a sign and trade next offseason. The Nets have done very good by Michael Porter Jr. They treated him well. He's said such. I think that if he could ride out the year, play hard for them, be a part of a competitive team, at least a team that's going to play hard, they'll max out his value at the end of the year while also being able to sign and trade him.
What is the goal for next season? I see a lot of people saying the Rockets have our pick. We have to contend next year. We have to win. And I'm in the mindset of that's a sunken cost. The most important thing to me, keep everybody healthy and let that backcourt get their shots up. Have the young guys grow their game, basically. I think that's what the goal should be. What do you think the goal should be?
It's a results-driven league. I think you don't have your own first-round pick this year. You should be competing for a play-in. But given the Nets timeline, we'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt here. In that, year one, I outlined that finding the right head coach was step one. They did that. In year two, it was about laying the foundation. They drafted 5 first-round picks. One of them right now looks very promising. The verdict is still out. on the other 4. Now you have Micheal Porter Jr. joining the fold, who is very much as exciting as Yegor is. Success for the Nets this year, in my opinion, is having those 2 guys level up and be leaders of this team, compete for a play-in. Maybe you don't make it, but at least compete. Give the fans something to turn the television on for. And I think after that, it comes with the Flatbush 5 and the other players on this team. How is the foundation going to be laid? How can you improve from last year? They won 20 games last year. Looking at 2 back-to-back seasons with, 55, 60-plus losses here. 118 losses in the last 2 years. You've got to have something to show for it. Get to 30 wins. You go from 20 to 30, you showed that you improved. You showed that in a tougher Eastern Conference, you can carve out a position in this playoff race or in this play-in race. Build an identity. Build that culture. You preach it, now practice it, right? Now you've had time to actually establish the intangible things along with the tangible things. So translate that to results. Translate that to wins. I don't think this is one of those scenarios where you're happy if they win 25 games. You want to see that 10-win jump, the same way that the Nets fans saw it from 2017 to 18 with Kenny Atkinson when they won, I think it was 28, and then 18-19 they won 42. I'm not saying they need to make that playoff run that D'Angelo Russell, Kenny Atkinson team did in 18-19, but I think you need to see what we saw in 17-18 when they went from 20 to 28. Pete, we would be sorely mistaken if we're saying that we're okay with them being a 25, 26 win team just because the East got better. That shouldn't matter.
Would you rather the Nets make it into the play-in but have the backcourt hurt or not get developed at all, or they win 20 games but you have Yegor and Micheal have explosive breakout years? I much rather have the guys have explosive breakout years and take the losses, because I think for a long term, finding out that backcourt is legit, super legit, is more important than getting 10 wins. Obviously there's not a scenario that's realistic and saying one or the other has to happen. But if I had to pick one, I would pick the development over the wins.
Yeah, and I mean anything that any answer that doesn't involve keep these guys as healthy as possible. I think we know with Yegor last year, he started his training camp on the sidelines. But this year, Micheal Porter Jr., he's healthy, but he's a player that has his own injury history. So, of course, Pete, what you're saying, it's always the option where these guys develop and stay healthy. Anything where they stay healthy is always going to be the answer. But, if we could get a little bit of the latter where they're developing and winning games, competing in games at least, then there's legitimate, tangible progress that Nets fans and the organization can track going forward.
Of course. All right, I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions at you. You ready?
Do it.
Player you're most excited to see this upcoming season on the Nets roster?
Yegor Dioman.
Nolan Traore is mine. I'm a big Nolan fan. He looks like he's gotten jacked in the offseason. I'm really excited to see what happens with him. What is your favorite Nets jersey?
Favorite Nets jersey of all time is the white ABA stars on the side, but that's the basic answer. The second favorite is
correct.
The black bougie with Brooklyn on the front.
Probably the best answer any guest has ever had on the show. I agree. The Dr. J jersey is the number one jersey of all time for me.
I'm not slipping up on the jerseys, Pete. We're not slipping up there.
Okay. Sport books have the Nets win total over under at 24.5. Are you taking the over or the under?
I'm going to say they're going to win more than 25 games. I think the Nets are going to win 29, 30 games.
I'm going to take the over also. All right, Pooch, let's get some promo in there for you.
Hey, man, look, follow our work at netsdaily.com. We have a talented staff covering the Brooklyn Nets, covering the Long Island Nets, covering the New York Liberty, and quite literally every single part of Brooklyn sports and entertainment. So check out netsdaily.com. Our Twitter handle and everything is at netsdaily. If you want to check out my work, I have a podcast called The Brooklyn. I write here and there. I'm at A Pooch. That's A Pooch, like a dog, on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever might have you.
All right, guys, you're watching this on YouTube right now. If you enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Have a good day, have a good night, and let's go Nets. We're out.